There we go. So welcome everybody, and I'm going to tell you the story of how we've been facing this cluster stop here in Mexico, and actually what we've been doing. Okay, my name is Javier Sevilla, and just feel free to ask any questions during this talk. And basically, at the beginning, I'm going to tell you the story of what we've been doing, what we have achieved so far, and then we will have this interactive session as well. Okay. So if you're interested in this cluster landscape, especially in Mexico, it's going to be fun. Okay. So a brief introduction on what's going on the cluster landscape here in Mexico. First of all, clusters, I would say, have a long history here. I think that some of the clusters are more than 20, 30 years old. Not all of them, some are quite new. But I think that they've been here for a while here in Mexico, okay? And usually we also find out that they are built around all the industries, and some of them in the current industries in Mexico and in the world. And they've been using this model from Europe, and which is widespread, which is the ESCA. And that's also at the beginning, that was also something that pushes back when we try to make the first contact with clusters, because they said, you know what, we've been following this model and we are even certified. Some of us already got the gold certification. So I think that we are pretty good here, okay? And there's also a chapter of the TCI network, which is I would say the global network of clusters all around the world. So basically, this tells us that there's been some developments here in Mexico regarding clusters. And the other important stuff is that some support from either local or federal government has been, especially in the past, okay? But what we see now is that federal support is no longer available, and the local support from governments is on a basis, case-by-case case, okay? And our estimate is that we have more than 100 clusters. And I think this is closer to 200, I would say, okay? So what's the story of us regarding clusters in Mexico? And how all this began, okay? I think that it was around 2019 when I was part of this Strategy Tools Global Coaches cohort. The first time that I really heard about clusters, I had no idea about them. And after a couple of months, I said, you know what, I think that we might give it a try and let's see what's the response we had, okay? So we made our first contacts with an agency in the local government, and we also tried to contact a kind of a cluster here in a local state, the state of Jalisco, okay? So we felt confident. We achieved to get some meetings. We arrived with a lot of tools. We said, you know what? I mean, if you're interested in clusters, I mean, we are the right company to help you, okay? And basically, the response was, okay, let's see what happens, but we didn't get any traction, okay? And I think I'm going to tell you the two perspectives. The first perspective is going to be what we experience as a consultancy firm, and then also I'm going to share some of the highlights or learnings that we've got so far, okay? So that was 2019. And basically, we said, you know what, this is not working. We need to rethink how we are going to approach to them, okay? So 2020 came, and COVID hit us, obviously. And we decided to change how we were going to approach to them. So we begin a series of webinars, and we decided to invite one of the cluster directors of one of the big cluster groups in Mexico, and we invited. It was uh, it was a she. She was part of this panel, and she was really interested on the things that we were actually doing, and especially she was interested on how we were saying that clusters could be this missing piece to link all actors in the innovation ecosystem. So from that time on, we began some really good conversations with her. Okay, and we were able to invite one of that group from the north of Mexico to be part of the Global Cluster Leadership Program. Okay, and previously another group from Mexico, which was contacted directly through Chris, was already in the middle of this program. Okay, and that really helped us and open us the door to begin more conversations, not just with the first contact we had, but with a group of the directors from that cluster. Okay, and we also agreed to help them make a brief diagnostic on this new view of working on clusters based on the Global Cluster Leadership Program, okay? And we organized a small workshop with them just to use one or two tools to help them understand how to use them, but especially what might be the impact with their clusters, okay? And for us, this invitation to the program, as well as doing this small diagnostic and this small workshop, was thinking to strengthen the links with them, because for us as a consultancy company, the real value for being in contact with these clusters is to get exposure with our members. Okay, that's where we think we might get real value, at least at this stage. And the other one is obviously to try to land a project to try to help them either at the regional level or at the federal level, okay? And then we also found out, thanks to one of the partners of Strategy Tools, that there was an initiative here in Mexico and Silicon Valley and San Francisco area to try to strengthen the links between that area and 5 cities in Mexico, okay? And one of those cities was precisely one that we already had some first contacts, okay? So I think that was also important, because when we decided to knock the door again with one of these local governments, it was to begin the conversation of on how we could help them to try to make that possible, or how we could help them to strengthen these links between the local government or the local industries and the Silicon Valley area, using a proven framework that was being used in other regions to strengthen or to create a better innovation ecosystem, okay? So I think that was key. So when we had those first conversations with this local government, they mentioned that it might be very interesting that we provided them a proposal to help them in the transition of the automotive industry, which is something that we are working right now, okay? We're at that first stage. And then we also decided that it would be nice to be able to involve federal government, okay? And to try to put together not just the federal government, but some local governments, as well as the cluster directors or presidents. So we decided to organize a super cluster simulation, okay? And I'm going to tell you what happened, especially what were the main learnings during this diagnostic and short workshop that we did with this group of clusters from north of Mexico, as well as what happened with the cluster simulation, okay, where more players were involved. So the first part is when we work with these clusters from the north of Mexico, one of the things they wanted to know is what was missing, okay? So they asked if we would be able to provide a kind of a diagnostic on what we saw they were missing based on the framework that Strategy Tools and Christian has created, okay? And we realized that we didn't have this kind of diagnostic, okay? So we decided to create our own, which is strictly, it's pretty basic, but it gave us a pretty good understanding of what was missing and what was going on over there, okay? And we also used some of the tools during the workshop, okay? Basically, what we did previously, we had interviews with all of the cluster directors, and then in one session, we gave them the diagnostic and the recommendations, okay? The highlights in general from that group of clusters was that obviously they loved the program. They said that it changed their perspective of how they saw the clusters. And they also love being able to learn what other clusters are doing and expand their network, okay? And on the diagnostic, they realized that they've kept this internal strategy focus. And basically, they've been competing or providing or focusing on networking, training, and some of them helping their members access project financing, okay? Which is, I would say, what most of the clusters pretty much do, okay? But they also realize that they need to identify these big industry problems, okay? And they realize that that will help them to create more value for their members or attract new members and also foster open innovation, okay? Because that's the way that you can link or invite companies or new companies to work with startups, but also to realize that they don't have to build everything by themselves, which is pretty common here in Mexico, okay? So that's another interesting point. And also, obviously, they want to change their value proposition to be more attractive, okay? And they also realized that they didn't have any startups or venture capital in some cases at all. I mean, I think that only one or two of these clusters have been working with startups, but and maybe one venture capital, but that was basically. And then later on, we realized that that's the same picture all over Mexico, basically. And they also realized that they don't have like a clear regional cluster policy, even though that they've been supported by local government the last couple of years. And another of the things that it was important for them is that they realized that they should be doing some steps to be financially self-sufficient, maybe in the medium term, okay? So these were some of the key learnings from that short work that we did in a second stage after they participated in the Global Clusters Leadership Program, okay? And the other interesting work or project, small project we did was the super cluster simulation. And for that one, we wanted to involve more players, okay? So we decided to contact the federal government, the national government, and we were able to be in contact with like like the equivalent to the agency of finance in Mexico, and I think that we had 3 or 4 participants from them, and we have also the participation of some local governments, of 2 of them, from 2 of the 3 biggest cities and states in Mexico, and also the participation of some of the clusters directors or presidents. Okay. As you know, this simulation is pretty fun, a lot of energy, and we did it during 2 days. And it was a 2 day session of around 4 hours, I think. Okay. And there were some really nice and interesting learnings here. We briefly discussed what can be done here in Mexico, and we also use some of the tools to identify what are these industries where they are actually focusing right now, either at the government level or at the cluster level. And we realized that we don't have identified yet many, maybe not a single one, industry of the future where Mexico should be focusing to create value, okay, for the next years, which was quite interesting. And this is also, it's tough because the national view of where the government should focus the resources, it's, I would say that it's maybe from the past. So that's kind of difficult. Okay, so how we can align a policy that foster and support clusters and balancing these two different views. Okay, so what were the highlights from the participants from the government? Is that they said that they had a better understanding of what clusters are. And I think that's one of the key challenges that the clusters face, because usually even their members don't understand pretty much how a cluster works or what they are trying to achieve. Okay, so that was really interesting from the government part. They also realized that we in Mexico don't have a national cluster policy, and they also think that maybe this year, I mean, we will try to make the first step, okay, to try to put the first seats to in the couple on the following years maybe have this national cluster policy. And for them, it was also interesting how to balance these current industries that are supporting Mexican economy and how we can identify these industries of the future, okay? And in general, I would say that some of the highlights was having like a common language to exchange ideas or discussions. They love the stories and examples that we shared with them of what other regions or clusters are doing. Visual tools, as we know, it always speed up the understanding, the discussion, and the decision making, and they just love the simulation, okay? And also they realize that they need to identify these industry level problems, okay, to make sense of clusters and the value that they can bring to the table. And basically, that's where we are right now, and we are trying to put together this first draft proposal for this local government to help them, like in the transition of the automotive industry, using this cluster approach. And we are in the first step to try to discuss something on a national policy level. Okay. It's been a long way. It's slow, and especially, I mean, from at least from our perspective, where we really didn't have any previous experience working with clusters, but that's what we have achieved so far, and we think that we might do something more interesting this year. Okay. I'm not sure if you have any questions about how is the current state of the clusters in Mexico, and especially using this different view of how to work or how to develop clusters. Because the second part, it's going to be focused on what we did and the challenges that we identify at the beginning when we had the first conversations, either with clusters, with the cluster directors, or with government, which I think that might be interesting to try to develop, obviously, some projects with them.
Javier, first of all, I think it's great job that you have done making some inroads. As I think I shared with you, I had previous contacts, particularly in Monterrey, with the aerospace cluster and CLELAC, which is focused on electrodomestics. And what I see is, and please give me your view on this, is one that many of Mexico clusters are currently focused on manufacturing and trying to solve the issues of maybe talent development, linkaging with the international value chains, etc. So the first question is, where do you see the clusters driving real innovation, or do you think that will happen more at a company level and maybe with some startups, or do you think that cluster can really be a nurturing factory for innovation in Mexico? And the second question is, who is currently the champion at the national level? In which kind of secretaria should be clusters, being developed, at least the national policy?
Yeah. First, I think that right now they are not doing much innovation. I mean, at least with the clusters we've been in contact with. I mean, everybody loves to say that they are like really pushing this or helping companies to innovate. But the reality is that they are focusing on efficiency innovation. Okay, so the innovations that they are focused right now are on the current businesses of their members. Okay, and I would say that training, when it's focused on innovation, it's focused on that part. Okay, on all the efficiency and all the flavors that we all know. Okay,
yeah.
But they are not thinking. Yeah, they are not thinking on how they can help either their members to be prepared for the future. Okay, so that's one of the things, and they haven't thought about their own future as well. I mean, they thought that the business was going to be as usual. Okay, but suddenly they realize that they need to change. Okay, and they think that innovation might help them, but I would say that they are not sure how. Okay. But I think that the clusters can play this role of being like the link between all the innovation ecosystem actors. And I think that's also an interesting part for clusters, because they realize that they also can incorporate that into their value proposition to create more value to their current members, or to either attract new members. Okay, because they also face this challenge right now, that as budgets or government budgets are being cut, they are not sure if they are going to be receiving the local support that they had received in previous years. Okay, so they understand that they need to change. Okay, and then there are some clusters, especially the manufacturing ones. Big industries in Mexico are automotive and electronic industry in general, and I would say they are in a pretty solid position compared to other clusters, because the number of clusters they already have. And I would say that they feel that they don't need to change, or not really change. Okay, But I think that the reality would come to them as well, because if their members are going to suffer these disruptions, they will suffer it as well in the long run. Okay. And then the other question, I'm not sure if I answered that the question.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
gives
that part.
a good perspective. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And the other part on who should champion this national policy or effort on clusters in Mexico, I think it's either the Secretaría de Economía Nacional, or we have like an innovation and technology agency as well, which is called, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a long one. And but I think that Secretaría de Economía is like the finance agency, which should be like the one more suitable for doing that. Okay, and that agency is the one that was involved in the cluster simulation we did. Okay, we were able to contact one of the directors of that agency, and I think that just a couple of days before the invitation, they heard about this TCI conference for Latin America, where Greece was part, and it made a lot of sense for them. So for this director, and he sent us with our team to be part of this simulation. And actually, I mean, that was pretty interesting, because I mean, in the past they said that they've been, not in this new federal government, but with the previous one, they've been working on case-by-case scenario with some clusters, okay? Trying to support them either financially or through getting some funding. But they realized that there's no such a national cluster policy, okay? And they realized that the potential that it can bring to the table is really big. And with them, we already we have these ongoing conversations, and we hope that we can get like the first seats for a more interesting effort for maybe not for this year, but I think that this year, at least at the national level, is going to be like the first seats, to try to do something more interesting next year. And then, I mean, they like the approach, and they also realize that they need to be in more contact with local governments, as well as with regional clusters, okay? Because again, I mean, clusters are all over Mexico and depend a lot on the local support that they receive, okay? Because usually, I think that there are only one or two clusters, that maybe three, that have this like a national representation, because the rest of them, I mean, are just are not like a group together, okay? So that's also interesting. I mean, how they can understand the needs they have, how they can support them if it's not through financing, and just being able to be on the same table and to discuss stuff and to understand what are the shortcomings that clusters are facing. I think that was important. And some of the participants said that the Secretaría de Economía should be encouraging those kind of sessions, okay? Just to invite and to be able to know each other and to discuss the focus of what should be done next, okay?
Thanks.
Hi, Victor. You got it back?
So much better.
Right. Okay. So I'm not sure if you have any other question. If not,
Well, let me get one note. Just a moment.
Otherwise, give me a second.
Yes. One quick observation, Javier, what I really find interesting that there, like you said, there's no national cluster policy. But you do say clusters have a rather long history in Mexico. So how do you see that this balance between a overarching cluster policy and a long tradition of clusters? Do you have some background information on that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, as a national policy, we have never had any. We had some effort to try to help clusters, and that's been on a case by case, I would say presidential period case. Okay, so a new government arrived and federal government arrived, and they like this cluster approach, and they try to help them. Okay, but I mean, basically the help was providing funds. Okay, but I guess that they never had this discussion of, okay, what's our present and how our clusters group around our current industries, but they had never discussed what should be those new industries of the future where Mexico should or could be a player. Okay, and that discussion and that question, I think that has never been part of any administration. And as I said, I think that we have never had this like a real or and structure like a cluster policy. And then at least at the federal level. And then at local levels, again, it's on a case by case question, okay? Some local governments have decided to support them. Others don't even know that clusters exist in their region. And I think that one of the most challenging parts of the future is how to reconcile this view of the president, which is focused on all the industry, and how do you incorporate this vision of we need to do something to create the new industries of the future, okay? And that's challenging at the federal level. I think that at the local level, some governments are seeing that, and I think that's one of the reasons they were interested, at least here in one of the states, of how we could help them in the transition of the automotive industry, because that industry is the second biggest one here in one of the states, of the local states of Mexico. And it's like it's how to balance that, how to balance the political fight between federal government and some opposition local governments. That's going to be interesting.
Javier, is cluster development specifically stated in any national development, national transformation, national competitive
No.
document? Not at all.
Not at all. No. 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 It's if somebody likes it, I mean, they try to do something on that. But that's it at the federal level. Local level, I'm not sure. It fits on like a formal document, but I know that they have been supporting some of them. Okay, for instance, in the center of Mexico, there's a lot of manufacturing and automotive and aerospace industry. So over there, local governments have been helping them, okay? And some kind as well in the north of Mexico. But again, it depends on each local government, okay? And what I thought that we could do to make this interactive is like, I didn't know how who was going to be involved here. I just shared the link, the Miro link here, and I wanted that we work on this with this information and with these tools on what we faced when we had the first conversations with either with clusters or with government, okay? Because at the beginning, as I told you, I mean, the first approach we had is, okay, thanks, we arrived with a bunch of tools, with a set of tools, but we were more focused on the tools rather than on helping or trying to understand either clusters or the government on how we could help them, okay? So, and I think that was one of the reasons that we didn't have any real traction as a result of those two first meetings, okay? And I think that might be interesting if either you are a consultancy firm or an advisor, or how to approach to those meetings and what you might expect from them, okay? And because as being like not really involved in the cluster landscape, at the beginning it's like, wow, there's so much stuff. So what do we use, okay? And basically it's the stuff that you're not that familiar with, okay? So in the first part, if you go to start here, the first exercise is based on a meeting with a cluster, either a cluster, especially a cluster director. And usually, I mean, what we knew before the meeting, the formal meeting, is that in general, the clusters are obviously struggling. I mean, they are not having like their best time. Usually they haven't grown in the last year, and they know that they are not sure if they would get additional financial support from the government, okay? So what I was thinking here that we might discuss is, okay, if you arrive there as a consultant, what would you like to discuss in that meeting, okay? What tools would you bring, or what tools would you use? And what would you like to achieve as a result of that meeting, okay? Because again, at the beginning, the first time that we tried this, it didn't go well, okay?
Javier, when you say that the cluster is struggling, how do you find, I mean, how do you find struggling? It is in terms of financial sustainability because they're running out of federal local resources, because membership fees, you know, are too high for members. Is not accomplishing the objectives set so far.
Yeah, before like the first meetings, like formal meetings that we had with them, we had like a small talk with them, and we realized that financially there was uncertainty because they hadn't received like the financial support that they usually receive at the beginning of the year. I mean, they were like getting responses of like, okay, we're going to provide it, but just wait. But then suddenly it was like almost the last trimester of the year, and they hadn't received it yet. And they also mentioned that their membership was not growing, and that they had some delays on the payment of the cluster membership as well. So that's like some indication that they were not in the best position. I mean, they were not facing like a disappearing, but they realized that things were not like they used to be. Okay, they were fighting to try to maintain the membership that they already had. Okay, because let's face it, I mean, usually the companies that are part of clusters are also part of some chambers or other associations. Okay, so when these companies are facing like dilemmas or economic disruptions, as we are seeing right now, uh, sometimes they try to decide, okay, uh, where shall I stay? Who shall I pay? Right? So that was like the conversations and the feedback that we were getting before those initial meetings. Okay, and and uh, and from like a um, consultant perspective, I think that the first thing you need to know is what what's the problem that you have before even like showing um, some tools or reports or all that stuff. And what I also found out that it's pretty good is uh, maybe like this storytelling stuff that Christian has encouraged us to do or to use. It, it helps because like they feel like they feel this familiarity and they see what they can become. Okay, because for instance, with a group of these clusters, they are seen as like the role models, I would say, in Latin America. Okay, because I mean they are organized. I mean they are working pretty good, but they also realize that there are things missing. But I think that they didn't know how to identify them or how to work on them. And some of those clusters obviously have like this their strategic plan and they have their objectives and all that stuff. But then they realize that they end up doing the same. I mean, the same stuff I think that we see with companies, it's also happening with clusters.
Yeah,
Okay.
what I've seen in the region, and it's interesting that Mexico is so let's say dispersed in terms of and isolated in terms of the clusters, and I don't know if that is a consequence of the difference, the political differences between local governments and the federal government. Because if you go to the other side, south, that is Colombia. Colombia has more than 100 clusters, and they have a network that has been quite successful in terms of at least sharing knowledge and organizing some conferences and trying to feed a national policy. So what I see in Mexico is kind of this isolation and really more of a chamber kind of model than really real clusters. And actually, I was going to ask you how active and what kind of role is academia playing in the clusters? Because if you go to some of the cluster websites, you will see academia and universities as part of the members. But I don't see a lot of research coming. So I don't know if the role is more of, partnering to make sure that we get enough people, with the technical knowledge that is going to be needed, or what kind of role are they really playing?
Yeah, what we've seen is that the role of academia is basically to help them in the training area. So basically, they identify with their membership what they need. I mean, what the training needs they have, and they go with academia to try to help them solve those gaps in knowledge. Okay, but it's mainly focused on training. As you said, it's not that much focus on research and development. I mean, I know they do it, but it's not like a strong part of it. And I think that they are missing a lot of opportunities there because sometimes some of the academic institutions are pretty good at the R&D, and they have pretty amazing people. But I think that they don't understand or they don't know where they should focus. So I think that's one of the missing points. I mean, clusters should be able to identify what are those industry problems or needs, and they don't do it right now. Okay, so they don't even do it for the current problems. Okay, so let's not talk about the future problems yet. And clusters realize that they can take advantage of academic institutions, but they are not using them properly. And academic institutions also are only focused on providing this training, okay? Because it's easy, it's something that they have used to do, and I know, I guess that they feel comfortable playing that role right now.
Do you see a chance of getting a sponsor for a national cluster summit, which is something that at the beginning of the cluster discussion with Chris back in 2018, we discussed having it in Costa Rica, to develop Costa Rica clusters. Do you see that viable in Mexico, just to get the conversation started, and do you see that the TCI network Latin America chapter could play the role? And I'm sorry if I'm steering away from
No, it's great. I think there might be a chance, not for this year, obviously, but I think that maybe for 22, that could be like an objective. Okay, we don't know yet. As I said, we just have like the first conversations at national level, but they were really receptive. So I think that that door is open, and we can continue working with them. But that would be amazing. I mean, like having this like summit, I think that would make a lot of sense.
How many people from Mexico is doing the global leadership? Let me get the name right. I was screw up.
Yeah,
the global cluster leadership program. Yeah. I know Claire doing it.
Yeah, from Nuevo León, from this group of clusters, I think they were 11.
Oh,
11 from that side. What we are trying to achieve here in Jalisco is to involve at least 3 of the clusters related to automotive industry. And previously, I mean, the first group that went directly with Christian was from the center of Mexico, from one of the states there. And I think they were like 10, something like that. Okay, and one of them was part of this simulation as well.
Become champions to drive a little bit this conversation.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
Victor,
think
Javier, I have monopolized the conversation. I know you have a lot
no. I think that it's good. I mean, and for instance, for this first group of the center of Mexico, I've seen that they are already applying some of the learnings from the program. Okay, so they are trying to be more involved with startups or how they like have this conversation with the different ecosystem innovation ecosystem actors. So I think that it's something that it's going on. They just announced also that they are creating this national supercluster on, I can't remember if it's the automotive industry or what industry. No, it's on aerospace industry. So they just created a national association for clusters on aerospace. So I think that it's moving, okay? And in the north of Mexico, with this group of clusters that we work, the challenge they are facing right now is that they have local elections for government, and I guess this year they are not sure if they would get support, and they are not sure who's going to win the next local elections. Okay, so policies might change for the better or worse. We don't know. Okay, but I think, I mean, for instance, the more active players from that group of clusters are from the north is Claire from aerospace, Angeles from ITC cluster, and that's, I think, and there's another one. Okay, so we see movement. The other one is and they are not with one. It's from multimedia cluster. Okay, so guys, I think that it's time to basically close the session. I just wanted to, I had some other findings like as next steps and all that stuff.
Okay, Javier, can we use your Miro board for the session tomorrow? I think we can just continue the discussion.
Yeah, sure.
When we talk about business models, I don't have to.
I have a tough decision, either to join Victor business models or be bored by me with the Latin America, Costa Rica example. So tough choice. Sure. I will join Victor though, and leave Carlos to teach to give the guest speaking, but
okay.
Interesting conversation.
Just to finish, I just want to share with you this. For us, these are some of the learning lessons. One is we can take advantage of the Strategy Tools Network. That's how we find out about this initiative between Mexico and Silicon Valley, for instance. Rick Rasmussen told me, okay, about that. And what we also might try to do is how could we exchange or create like a place to exchange experiences, okay? Because they would love to be part of that discussion, which is something like this national summit on clusters. We might create something even bigger, and I know that they would love to be part of that.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Thank you, guys.
Javier, will you be joining the session tomorrow with me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Roberto, you have your own session, right? Or at the same time?
Yeah, I was counting with Javier, so it seems that it's gonna be Carlos and myself.
Okay, good. Okay, guys, we have to.
Yeah, we have to jump. Okay.
I'll talk to you later.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay, bye.